Chapter 17. Promptly at 2 o'clock, Luke eased the door open a crack and peeked in. His timing was good. Boys were walking to and from classes, their heads bowed, their eyes trained on the ground. But a hall monitor stood directly across from the door. Luke ducked back. Look away, Luke mentally commanded the monitor. Luke waited. Then, just when he moved over, ready to peek again, he saw the door slide shut. Oh no. Luke tried to figure out what had happened. Had the monitor seen the door open, thought that one of his marauding gang had forgotten to close it and merely shut it to save his own skin? Or did he know Luke was out there? Stay calm, Luke commanded himself uselessly. His panic boiled over, and his anger. He hated that monitor. He was probably one of the boys who trampled Luke's garden. Luke could have looked for another door. He could have waited another hour, in hopes that a different hall monitor would be manning the spot and not paying as much attention. He could have gone back to the woods and waited until his usual time to come back. But he didn't. He grabbed the doorknob and yanked. As the door swung open, Luke saw that the hall monitor wasn't looking directly at the door just then. If Luke was sneaky enough, he could slip in without drawing attention to himself. But Luke let the door slam behind him. A cluster of boys with their eyes trained on the ground were jolted by the noise and even looked up briefly. Some of them started running, as panicked as if someone had fired a gun. Other boys didn't even glance Luke's way. The hall monitor jerked his head around immediately. Luke quickly joined the slow-moving group of boys with their heads down. But just before he lowered his own head, Luke caught the hall monitor's stare. Their eyes were locked for just an instant. Luke waited for the monitor to grab him by the collar, to yell, to haul him off to the headmaster's office. Luke could feel his shoulder hunching into a cower. Nothing happened. Luke shuffled forward with the other boys and dared to look up again. The hall monitor was carefully looking past Luke. He knows I was outside, Luke thought, and he knows. I know he knows. Why isn't he doing anything? It was like a chess game, Luke realized. He remembered one winter when Matthew and Mark had brought home a chess set from school. They'd had a blizzard after that, and they'd been snowed in for a long time, so Matthew and Mark spent hours playing chess. Luke had been a lot younger then, maybe only 5 or 6. The game that fascinated his brothers only puzzled him. Why don't all the pieces move the same way? He had asked, picking up the horse-shaped piece. Why can't this one go in a straight line like the castle? Because it can't, Matthew had replied irritably, while Mark squealed, Put that down, you're messing up our game. Now Luke almost trod on another boy's heel. The boy didn't even turn around. If everyone at the school were a chess piece, Luke realized, most of the boys were pawns. The hall monitors and the other ones Luke thought of as stairs were the big, important pieces, the bishops and king. Luke remembered that Matthew and Mark had treasured those pieces, sacrificing pawns and knights and castles to protect them. But Luke hadn't understood why, and he hadn't understood the hall monitor now. But he knew how to find out about him. Chapter 18. When dinner was over that night, Luke slipped out of the dining hall behind all the other boys. Instead of going into the evening lecture room like everyone else, he ducked down a dark hall. It wasn't a direct route to the door that led outside, but if Luke turned 3 corners and backtracked a bit, he'd get there. I know the school really well now, Luke marveled. If I had a note that I needed to read in private now, it wouldn't be a problem at all. Luke felt decades older than the scared little boy who'd worried so over the note from Jen's dad, and gotten so upset when he read it. It was just a scrap of paper. What did I expect? Luke wondered, would he ever look back on this day and regret getting so upset about his ruined garden? No. Luke had told himself it didn't matter if he ran into hall monitors. He could just start asking them questions. Why did you destroy my garden? What if I told the headmaster that you've been sneaking out? But now, creeping down the deserted hallway, he was glad he didn't have to test his bravado. As far as he could tell, the hall monitors were only guarded the main route to the door. He'd suspected as much. The monitors didn't have to be very cautious because most of the boys at the school behaved like sheep, only going where they were told. And all of the teachers seemed to be gone in the evenings. Luke reached the final corner before the doorway and stopped. The sound of his watch ticking seemed to fill the entire hall. Luke pressed his wrist to his chest to muffle it. Then it was his heart pounding that seemed too loud. His ears roared with listening. Was this how Jen had felt the night after she left for the rally? Brave, reckless, crazy, courageous, terrified, all at once? Didn't seem right to compare. Jen had been going to the rally, leading it in fact, in an effort to win rights for third children all over the nation. Even her parents didn't know what she was doing. But she had believed so strongly that nobody should have to hide that she died for it. Luke was mad about a garden. Thinking that way, Luke felt foolish. He wondered if he should turn around. Just because Jen's cause had been enormous, that didn't mean Luke's was unimportant. Like Jen, Luke wanted to right a wrong. Just then, he heard the sounds he'd been waiting for. Someone whispering, a muffled laugh, the click of the door latching. Luke waited a full 5 minutes. It was too dark to see his watch, so he counted off the ticks. Then he tiptoed out of the shadows and followed the others out the door. Chapter 19. The moon was out. It had been so long since Luke had seen the night sky that he'd forgotten how mystical it could look. The moon was full tonight, a beautiful orb hovering low over the woods. Luke also recognized the same pinpricks of starlight he'd been used to seeing back home. But the stars seemed dimmer here, overshadowed by a glow on the horizon beyond the woods. Luke puzzled over that glow. It was in the wrong part of the sky to be the sunset. What else was that bright? Luke remembered that Jen's dad had said the school was near a city. Could a city have lights that bright? That shone this far? I don't know anything, Luke whispered to himself. He thought that coming out of hiding would expose him to the world, teach him everything. But being at Hendrix seemed like just another way to hide. A light flashed in the woods just then, and Luke realized he didn't have time to hesitate. He'd planned to creep across the lawn, but the moonlight was so bright, he worried about being seen. He decided to take his chances with running. Nobody yelled. Nobody hissed, "Get away from here!" Luke reached the edge of the woods and hid behind a tree. Then he cautiously moved up the next tree, and the next one. The light swung erratically just ahead. Luke wished he'd taken the time to explore the woods, to get his bearings. He was terrified of walking straight into a tree, stepping in some big hole or tripping over a stump. He banged his shin and had to bite his lip to keep from crying out. He stepped in something squishy and almost fell. He wondered if he was traveling in circles. Then he heard voices. Hate nature. Yeah, well, you find a better place to meet. Luke crept closer. And closer. A strangely familiar voice was giving a long explanation. It's just your fear of the outdoors cropping up again. You've got to overcome it, you know? Easy for you to say, someone else grumbled. Luke was close enough now to see the backs of several heads. He dared to edge up to the next tree and peek out. 8 boys were sitting in a semicircle around a small, dim, portable lantern. Suddenly, another light flashed on the other side of the group of boys. A twig cracked. Luke ducked behind the tree. So, what's with the emergency meeting? It was a girl's voice. Luke inhaled sharply. Jen. It wasn't Jen, of course. When Luke dared to look out again, he saw a tall, scrawny girl with 2 pale, thin braids hanging on either side of her face. Jen had been shorter, more muscular, her brown hair cut short as a boy's. But just to hear a girl's voice again made Luke feel strange. It kept him from doing any of the crazy things he'd half planned. Leaping from behind the tree and screaming accusations, pretending to be a ghost haunting the woods, finding some way to exact revenge. All he could do now was listen. Sorry to disturb the princesses of Harlow, a male voice was answering mockingly. Luke knew that voice. He peered out. Yes, of course. Jackalboy. It's the new kid, Jackalboy was saying. He's acting weird. I should have known Jackalboy was involved, Luke thought. He probably planned the whole thing, led the charge of my garden. He glowered. Then he realized what Jackalboy had said. The new kid? As far as Luke knew, there was only one new kid at Hendrix. Himself. They were talking about him. Weird? The girl's voice replied. He's a boy, right? Isn't weirdness just kind of required? There were giggles. Luke squinted into the darkness. He thought that there were 3 or 4 girls besides the girl with braids. "Quit being such an ex-nay," Jackalboy said. "Ex-nay and proud of it," the girl retorted. Luke listened harder, as though that would help him make sense of their words. Who would be proud of being an ex-nay? If he'd learned anything at Hendrix, it was that ex-nay was one of the worst insults you could hurl at anybody. Yeah, I don't see you announcing it anywhere, but in the woods, in the dark in the woods, when nobody's around, Jackalboy taunted. "So you're admitting you're nobody," the girl said. One of the boys besides Jackalboy made a frustrating grunt. "Why do we bother talking to them?" he asked. Luke saw Jackalboy dig his elbow into the other boy's ribs. "I'll be noble and ignore that," Jackalboy said loftily to the girl. "Naturally, we don't expect you to offer us any assistance in this matter, but we thought it was in everybody's best interest to keep you informed." The girl sat down, and the other girls followed her lead. "So inform us." "The new boy," Jackalboy started. "Has he got a name?" the girl interrupted. "He's registered as Lee Grant," Jackalboy said. Luke noticed how he said that. Registered as, not his name is. Did Jackalboy suspect? "I looked him up," Jackalboy continued. "His dad's in charge of the National Gas and Electric. Filthy rich, and he's switched schools a lot." "That could fit," the girl said. "But he doesn't seem like he has autism or any of the other disorders. I don't think he's even agoraphobic." Luke didn't even try to puzzle out the unfamiliar words. Jackalboy was still talking. "Trey over there saw him coming in from outside this afternoon." "He was outside?" the girl asked. She sounded amazed, maybe even impressed. "Out here in the woods during the day?" "Don't know," Jackalboy said. Luke felt almost triumphant at the note of misery in the boy's voice. But Luke was confused. Had Jackalboy and his friends destroyed the garden without even knowing it belonged to Luke? Or was Jackalboy lying? "Trey didn't see him until he was back inside," Jackalboy continued. He doesn't like looking right at the door." "Great guard system you got going there," the girl said. "Shut up, Nina," one of the boys yelled. Luke guessed it was Trey. "Don't call me that." "The girl, Nina," yelled back. Why would she have a name she didn't want to be called? And then Luke understood. He too had a name he hated. He hated it because it was fake. And so was hers. Nina was another former shadow child. She had to be. Luke looked with new eyes at the group sitting in front of him in the dark woods. They must all be illegal third children using false identities. Luke's heart gave a jump. At last, he'd found others like him. He'd found a place to belong. Luke started to move out from behind the tree, to reveal himself. Finally, he'd found other kids to talk to about how hard it was pretending to be someone else. Finally, he'd found other kids who would know how tough it was to come out of hiding. Finally, he'd found other kids he could trust as he trusted Jen. They could grieve for Jen with him. Then he remembered. He was almost certain these were the ones who destroyed his garden. Luke stayed put. All right, Jackalboy was saying. Calm down. The point is, this kid, this Lee, doesn't fit any of the profiles. Did you give him the test? Nina asked. Well, there was a little problem, Jackalboy said hesitantly. Go ahead and say it, Trey burst out furiously. I flubbed the whole thing. I don't know why you make me guard that spot. Because you're the bravest one, Jackalboy said. Luke recognized that tone. It was the same sort of wheedling voice that Luke's brothers had used on him when they wanted him to do something unpleasant, like clean out the hog pen or spread manure on the garden. Trey turned and faced Nina directly. I left the door open, but I couldn't stand to be that close to it. I walked down the hall, just for a minute. When I got back, this Lee kid was nowhere in sight. Left the door open. Suddenly, Luke understood. That first time he'd noticed the door when it was ajar, it had been a test set up by Jackalboy's gang. But what were they testing him for? Maybe he went outside then too, Nina said. All the boys seemed to be shaking their heads in disbelief. I waited for 3 hours, Trey said. I stared at that door the whole time, honest. Nobody'd stay out that long. Why not? Luke wondered. So, is he one of us or not? Nina asked. The question seemed to hang in the dark woods. Luke wanted to know the answer too. "Who knows?" Jackaboy said. "The problem is, he's getting bold. Weird, like I said. We're scared he's going to get the rest of us in trouble, blow our cover. This afternoon, he just stared back at Trey like he didn't care what Trey saw or what Trey did. He was defiant," Trey said. Even Luke could see the baffled look Jackaboy gave Trey. "Sorry," Trey said. "All I had to do when I was hiding was read, remember? I didn't have a TV like the rest of you. I learned too many big words. Defiant means, he was defying me. He was offering a challenge," Luke said aloud. And then he stepped out from behind the tree.